Welcome back to Bees In with Brit. Tonight we're talking about something that usually feels about as exciting as dry toast. But my guest is here to give democracy the rebrand it deserves. Sami Sage is the co-founder of Betches Media, host of the daily morning announcements podcast presented by Betches News, and co-author of my latest emotional support book, Democracy in Retrograde. Sami has made it her mission to show us that civic life doesn't have to be boring, scary, or reserved for politicians. In fact, she reframes it as self-care, finding your voice, your values, and your community. Sami, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with your audience about democracy.
I think in the book you said something like it's kind of like dry toast, but honestly, the rebrand is so important. And you and your co-author, Emily, are just rebranding democracy, and it's so needed. So will you talk to us a little bit about what inspired you to write this book, to want to take on the rebrand?
So she and I both for, at least, the better part of a decade now have been covering politics and news on social media, especially Instagram. And with that short form, that short form way of sharing information and with the way algorithms work, it can really seem, kind of flattened. I don't think that there's really necessarily a good understanding of what quote unquote governing is and what democracy affords us. And, I think as we're seeing how, the past several months have gone, I think that it's one of those things that, you don't seem to know what you got till it's gone. And you look around and everything or certain things are so vastly different, in some cases unrecognizable, really depending where you live and what community you come from. And that I think was taken for granted. And I think what we were trying to do, this book came out before the 2024 election, was reframe what it means to be a quote unquote citizen of the United States and what those privileges are and what you can do to really take back your place within the civic fabric, which I think so many of us don't fully maximize to the extent that many other people, particularly, the very wealthy are doing at, all times and have been for years.
100%. And I mean, I'll be honest and say that I am like your target audience. I mean, reading this book, I just kept saying, yes, oh my gosh, I needed this. And so I happen to marry an attorney who is like very, civically engaged, has been for a long time, was even a prosecutor at one point. So I've learned a lot through him. He's empowered me a lot. And then this book really has been filling in the gaps for me of understanding what are my rights? Like, what? Oh my gosh. I'm like, I actually can do this. My voice does matter. I don't have to be a politician to get involved. So, will you
Yeah.
talk more about the empowering elements? Because that's just been so helpful.
So what we wanted to write was not a book about, how does the government work, although you can get that information. This
It's
is
in
not a
there.
partisan book.
Yeah.
It's not about particular policy issues, but it's really about us as an American community, all of us as members of our local communities, of, any groups we're part of, and our neighborhoods, and this idea that what that being in that community and taking part in what we have the freedom to do as Americans is an integral part of, or can be an integrally positive part of, our identities. So we reframed civics as self-care. That doesn't mean, now what we mean by that is not necessarily following, every news story. It doesn't mean knowing the details of how Congress works in and out, but it means finding either a cause or an issue or something that gives you a community-based purpose and figure out how you can help the people around you. So in the book, we have a lot of exercises where, and one of the things we have asked people to do is sort of envision their perfect town. And what would the characteristics of that town be? How would people relate to each other? And that is really we're trying to help people get at a sense of their values. And then by virtue of knowing what those values are, figure out ways that you can actually apply your own particular skills and interests and time and resources and money to to that particular thing that you're passionate about, because there's so much that needs to be changed. Even when things are quote unquote good, things still, like, I think this is being part of a community and relating to each other and meeting people who are different than you and the process of working through those things to figure out how we're going to live together and coexist is valuable to us as human beings, as much as we might want to avoid them.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, we do have to engage with with a lot of things to understand other people's perspectives. And you talk about that in the book as well. There's a lot of practical tips for, having conversations with people that maybe do not align with your values. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd all agree, but that's just not how it works, right? And so we have to get comfortable having conversations. Will you talk more about that, about getting comfortable having conversations with people and even speaking to your representatives, becoming more comfortable with doing that as well?
Well, your representatives should actually be easier because technically they work for you. So I think for that, it's more about this fear or this sense that they are very important,
Mhm.
more or this sense that you can't reach them. But the truth is, your congressional representative, you are their constituent. There's thousands of people in a district and they are accountable to you. And I think something that maybe might be helpful to understand is how many people in this country don't vote. Like, even in the 2024 election, which had extremely high turnout, was one of the highest turnout elections. I think it was the second highest ever. 90 million people did not vote at all. That's more than
Wow.
the number of people who voted for either candidate by like 10 million or so
Wow.
people. So that is, I think, if you reframe it and realize that there are so many people in general, like, than we can even fathom. And just because they're not the loudest or just because you haven't connected with them doesn't mean that there aren't people who agree with you and want to make the changes you want to make.
Mm.
So, and your representatives are supposed to be accountable to those changes. So don't be afraid to, I don't mean obviously be appropriate, but be
Right.
persistent with your representative. The second thing about having conversations with people who don't agree with you. Now, I think there's a line between someone who is dehumanizing you and someone who disagrees with you. So I want to stay in the, when I want to stay away from that, potentially more traumatic conversation, but talk about the disagreement. And I guess the question I would pose to everybody is, what have those fights or those conversations you've gotten in or avoided getting in, what has it changed? Has that like been productive? I understand in some cases you want to preserve a relationship
Mhm.
and every situation is obviously different, but I think be less afraid to just disagree, and you don't have to hate someone because they disagree. I think really being online has given us such a offbeat sense of how humans interact,
Right.
because if this idea that you just write someone off because
Mhm.
they said something online, or the things that people will say online are things they might never actually say in real life.
Sure.
I think being online is what has made people very dehumanizing. But if you're in person with somebody, it's okay to disagree with them, and it's okay to get in a conversation even if you don't know the ins and outs of a particular policy. You can just say I don't think this is right, and you are allowed to think that. And also, that's not going to change the course of history. So I think put less of your understanding of political parties or the political space on your personal random sample of conversations that you have, and try to
Mhm.
look beyond that, and think and really just make this about what do you care about.
I like that. Yeah, what do you care about? And really speaking positively about it and putting that out there, not being afraid to put that out there, especially if there are opposing voices, you have just as much of a right to put out there what you think. It's like we can all speak.
And I think it's also seeing other people and other groups and ourselves as more nuanced. Not
Mhm.
everyone is, if someone, I think there's this idea that people have these really thought out political opinions when in reality, most people are just don't, I don't believe they necessarily know what their opinions are, or have hardcore formed opinions. So when you look at a group and you say like, oh, they're never gonna, they all think this way. It's like, maybe minds can be changed. Is that
Right.
not doable?
Right.
And I think approaching things like, it's possible to change someone's mind. Like you don't know how strongly they hold a particular belief, or how knowledgeable they are on something. And maybe instead of fighting, try to change minds.
Like, have a conversation and, like, just share. Like, think
Yeah.
of it as, like, sharing, like, why
Or ask
you
like,
think something else and see what they have to say and try to have a conversation back and forth. I like
why
that.
do you think that?
Yeah.
And sometimes just the simple act of asking someone rather than just responding can be more effective, because they're understanding their own, asking them that question and them answering it helps them understand their own feelings within the context of an actual conversation. When sometimes I think people's ideas just live in their head a little bit.
For sure. For sure, I agree. Okay, so that's like, our peers, the good actors, our representatives, like most of the people that we speak to in good faith that we believe are having a real conversation, a back and forth with us. But then there's also that group of people that, you guys talked about in the book that was very interesting. I was kind of sucked in. You said that there's a small handful of wealthy and powerful people who are actively strategizing and spending lots of money to make sure that you ignore politics and you neglect your privileges. So when we have situations where maybe, I don't know, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point you're going to come up against somebody on social media, like, someone who is in this current administration, and they're going to say something and you kind of feel like you're going to hit a wall there. It's not going to be a back and forth. That person is going to be set in their ways and they have a different agenda. What are your thoughts on how we manage that internal stress or feeling kind of defeated before we get started? Like, okay, wow, well, I'm not going to be able to affect anything. And this person is the one holding the power right now. How do we kind of work through that mentally?
I think everything feels so immediate. Like,
Sure.
I think because we've started, especially, to live on our phones and like second to second, it feels like everything's going to always be this way now.
Hmm.
And people change things. I'm not saying like the bad actors will change. They will not change. And I think handling bad actors like they are bad actors is the best way to not spin your own wheels about them. Like, don't be afraid to call people out. Don't be who are acting in bad faith. Um, I think sometimes there's a lot of allowing one group to set the agenda or the conversation. And so when the right wants to demonize trans rights and talk about youth sports and make it seem like this is something that's affecting every athlete in the nation, why is it that that is a conversation, even like a main topic of conversation, even in schools where there are no, in non-co-ed schools?
Hmm.
There's some level of lack of logic to
Hmm.
what bad faith actors want us to be talking about. And I think the answer is to just, it's not to respond and be like, well, actually it's okay that, trans kids compete because blah, 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 blah. Like that's not, just rambling a bunch of facts to people is not going to necessarily work. Calling it out and being like, you are demonizing teenagers so that you can create cultural division and polarize people. And if you really think that this is a huge issue, then take it up with your school board. But the fact that you are nationalizing the participation of like 12 kids in school sports is a ridiculous tactic meant to stir up hate and distract people from the real problems. And the fact, and you can list your other series of things. The fact that the healthcare industry is able to take more and more money from Medicare and Medicaid every year, and that the people in Congress are allowing that. There's so many other conversations to be had, but the fact that so much time is spent talking about bathrooms is crazy to me.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they are acting in bad faith to create a distraction, to create fear of immigrants and
Mhm.
trans people and women having jobs. Like that is a an emotional tactic. It is not a problem-solving tactic. And I think people have to be less afraid to just be like, I want to solve this problem, get on the train or don't.
Yes. Like, it's sort of like realize that that's a lot of noise. There's a reason for the noise. They're trying to get you to, get sucked into that and have that conversation and wear yourself out. And then, you kind of walk away instead of being like, okay, this is noise. I understand what they're doing. I'm going to stay focused on the actual issues that are important. And you kind of bring focus back where, a lot of those people don't want you to be focusing.
That's exactly it. When Taylor Swift said on New Heights that
Love a
you
Taylor
should
Swift
think
quote.
of your energy as expensive. That's how I think we should all be approaching really anything we do, but especially any form of activism or civic engagement or engagement with, really any of your neighbors. It's like, don't bother with, just stay the course of what you're doing, what you know to be right, and rely on the people around you who you believe, align with those values.
Mm, I love that. Yes, 100%. Like, that is so true. It's something that we all have to remember. And it can get difficult. I mean, I'll tell you, I've gotten sucked in before. And then I'm like, what was that? Why was I even engaging with that? It was just nonsense. And
Same.
yeah,
Well, my other piece is I really think that people need to like get off their phones. I feel that there should be more norms. It's not just like, oh, get off, like decrease your screen time. I'm not really
Mhm.
talking about an individual situation. Like I think the idea of telling people to get off their phones is sort of like thinking that we're going to solve the climate crisis by people individually recycling. Like I think there need
Right.
to be new societal norms formed around phone use.
Hmm.
Like there used to be norms around when you could call somebody's house. Like why aren't there
Right.
sort of tradition? I obviously you can't just create a tradition, but certain, maybe ways that we can kind of collectively agree to relate to phones. Like, maybe like weekend morning hours off. Like that would be nice.
Yes. I mean, if anybody's going to start this new sensation, it's you, Sammy, you and the Betches. Maybe it's like a new lifestyle thing that we all need to try out.
I've been thinking about this for quite a long time, and I
Mhm.
think it's like it has to sort of be organic. So if everyone
Yeah.
who's watching right now wants to try it, wireless weekend mornings. I've been chatting about it here
Right.
and there.
Okay. And what do you do? So, how do we get in on this?
Just what I mean, it's really hard to like basically to like have the self-control if you don't, know other people are. A lot of people look at their phone in the morning for a
Mhm.
clock. Honestly, what I had tried to do is that I just spend my Saturday and Sunday mornings doing something that is not scrolling, even if that means like watching a movie or reading a book or going out to breakfast
Mhm.
or, just sitting outside and not scroll, like literally just the not scrolling, and just try to kind of spend my mornings on Saturdays and Sundays being a little bit slower and not connected. And I think that it clears a lot of brain space, honestly.
It really does. And that's kind of what we need. And like going back to what you were just saying about how, like, there are certain things that are going to be distracting and they're going to pull our energy kind of down into a negative place where we're not being productive and we're getting sucked into things that it's really not even worth our time. Right. I feel like a lot of this is having emotional distance and enough like mental distance to have perspective and do the hard thing. I mean, you talk about the big salad in the book and like eating our vegetables. And that to me has been, going online, learning, reading this book, really trying to understand how can things change? Like what can we do? Who do I need to contact? Who should I email? Like these are real things that are not the glamorous, fun things. It's not as fun as being on social media and, saying something back to someone else, but that's what's going to make us feel better in the long run and it's more fulfilling.
Yeah, when we talk about the big salad that's a Seinfeld reference in the book
I
that,
love it.
but just the idea that, we're not going to get to a better society, the ones I think meant everybody kind of envisions like a shared vision of that. I think most people agree we're going in the wrong direction, hence democracy in retrograde.
We're retrograde right now. Yep.
Exactly. Um, it's going to take like more than one thing. We're trained, especially now, to want immediacy, immediate, gratification. If I post this infographic about healthcare, like if I go to a rally or whatever, vote for this person, it should come. And maybe that is the case because the healthcare system in particular is very corrupt. But and we're up against a really corrupt, like a captured system essentially. And I think understanding that and not being like in denial about that is helpful. But a lot of it is like real world actions. If you can use the internet to do something that's real, and everyone does, but that's very different than achieving something in real life. Getting a bill passed in your town, getting a stop sign added at a busy intersection, getting your town to, build more housing in a certain area. Those are real achievements, and they don't come just because you post generally about, wanting more housing, whatever it is. But we live in this culture that expects it to be easy, and it's not.
And it does feel good. Just like when you eat a salad rather than, have that like third greasy fast food meal of the week, like you do feel better. Like it does feel really good. You're like, okay, I feel good. Like I did something good for myself. My stomach doesn't hurt. I feel healthy. So
Yeah. And we're social creatures. Humans are social creatures. We're not supposed to be interacting with this many people and getting this many inputs relative to the number of face-to-face deep interactions that or even casual, but more material interactions that we as humans, like we have not evolved to have this level of cell phone use.
No.
So I think there's this sense, when you go somewhere, you're like, oh, I don't really want to leave my couch. I'd rather scroll on my phone. You go and you're like, wow, I'm so happy I did that. That's a lot of what it is. And something else we talk about in the book is the importance of having friends and community with picking things that you want to do, that you will not find boring, with people who share your values and your interests, so that you will want to keep doing it. And you're not gonna be able to do everything. You're not gonna know about every issue. You might only know about one very specific thing that happens on your school board, but you're affecting hundreds to thousands of children potentially. So think about the real impact that you can make.
How do you keep sane? Because you are in it, you are translating the information, you're so knowledgeable. We can go to your social media and be entertained and educated at the same time. But how do you stay sane, like in your own brain, Sami?
So, well, a few things. So I do, I am sort of always immersed in it. I do the morning announcements podcast every day. It's basically like 5 to 10 minute headline recap. And you can get, the idea is that I'm following the news so that you guys can all just hear it, get it done with in 5 to 10 minutes. You know everything you need to know, and then you don't have to think about it. But let's say someone brings something up to you, or you want to kind of follow a particular topic, you can just get that information and then put it in a box until you need it. So that's kind of the way I think about it. Honestly, like I had sort of said a little bit earlier, is that I really look for the humor in it. And I tend to sort of like, I think about it as like, I have this kind of purpose. Like I grew up always, in a family that watched the news, heavy newsies. I was always very interested in politics and culture. And I feel like I have sort of this unique, both like intersection of interest and knowledge and the ability to contextualize it for sort of the average person who doesn't want to know all the names of like the congressional subcommittee co-chairs. Like that's not relevant to people in the way that the bottom line is. And having a sort of purpose and the ability to just like see what's going on as this like joke, that a very harmful joke, but I feel very lucky to be able to do that. And yeah, I try to filter it through a lens of like, I'm just watching The Real Housewives with significantly worse consequences, but
That's literally what
reminding
it is.
myself.
I know.
Yeah. And, I spend plenty of time, just reading, watching
Mhm,
TV, relaxing, touching
mhm.
grass.
So important. And I also love listening to the morning announcements. I listen to it just this morning. I listen to it every day because
Thank you.
you really deliver what we need to know, bottom line, like you just said, and it just kind of gets us up to speed, you know?
Yeah, I'm not
And that's
trying
a
to
good
bullshit anyone.
resource. That's a good resource too for people who are wanting to get more involved, learn, but maybe they don't have the bandwidth or the time to do like a full deep dive podcast on politics, but it's a way to stay up with what's happening.
Yeah, I'm also not gonna like BS anyone.
Mhm.
I'm trying to put it in context of how I understand things to be. So you're getting like my pro democracy bend, generally like, pretty liberal, progressive in the classic sense, but I'm trying to really present the news and political landscape to people who are not incredibly engaged or following it.
Mhm. And it's really helpful. It's so helpful, so interesting. And everything that you have done, that you've put together, everything that I mean, from Betches Media being a co-founder, bootstrapping it 12 years until it was purchased, to writing this book, to writing other books, you're a best-selling author. I mean, Sammy, you've done so much for the culture, for us,
Thank
in
you.
general. Like, thank you for everything. You're such an inspiration, and we really appreciate you being a leader in this way. It's so needed. It's so important. And thanks for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you. This was such a fun conversation. Please, anytime.
If you're as fired up as I am after that conversation with Sami Sage and animal welfare is one of your chosen civic engagement activities, there's an opportunity that you can't miss. On Friday, October 3rd, the Texas Humane Network presents Laws for Paws 2025 at the Austin Central Library. The full day symposium brings together leading legal and animal welfare experts for continuing education, with sessions on service animals, cruelty cases, a recap of the 89th legislative session, and how to navigate today's animal law landscape. You'll enjoy breakfast, lunch, and a special Ask an Animal Lawyer session while connecting with professionals shaping the future of animal protection. Space is limited. Register now at texashumanenetwork.org. Don't miss Laws for Paws 2025. Looking for the perfect mix of pop culture, astrology, and celebrity gossip? Then you need to be listening to In the Cards and Stars. Each week, host Britt Mogensen spills the tarot tea on celebrity scandals, breaks down the cosmic transits shaping our lives, and shares uplifting insights to help you plan your own big moves. It's smart, it's fun, and it feels like hanging out with your most intuitive best friend. Subscribe now to In the Cards and Stars on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, and join the Tarot Tea fam today. Thank you so much for watching Bees In with Brit. To stay up to date on all our new episodes and behind the scenes fun, make sure you're following us on Instagram at BZN TV. I'll see you back here in October. And as always, don't forget to support your local animal shelter. Whether it's fostering, adopting, or volunteering, every act of kindness makes a difference. Until next time, take care and be Zen.